Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something I think we all face eventually. The power of the comeback.
Yeah, bouncing back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You shared some really insightful material.
Yeah.
Focused on how people navigate setbacks and, rise again.
Right.
So our mission today is really to explore these ideas, pull out the key learnings, see what feels relevant when you're actually in that challenging spot.
It's a fascinating area, definitely. And the sources, they offer a great framework, I think. We've got this template for a motivational story. Mm-hmm. It breaks things down into stages like the fall, the turning point, the grind, and then the breakthrough.
Right, those key moments.
And alongside that, there's a full narrative example, the unbreakable spirit, which kind of brings it all to life through this fictional character, David.
Okay, great. So let's just jump right in then. The first thing that really stood out to me, at least, was this concept of hitting rock bottom. The template actually calls it the setup for your greatest comeback. And in David's story, it's described as the best place to rebuild your life. Well, it's a pretty strong statement, isn't it?
It really is. What are your initial thoughts on that? I mean, this idea that our lowest points could actually hold so much potential.
Well, it kind of reframes things, doesn't it? Instead of just despair, it's possibility.
Exactly. What's intriguing, I think, about this rock bottom idea isn't just, having nowhere else to go, but the potential for a real shift in perspective, like when all the external stuff, the familiar routines are stripped away.
Yeah.
It can force you to confront what actually matter.
Right. Like the noise gets turned down.
Yeah. When you lose everything, maybe those superficial concerns just fade and you get a clearer picture of your core values, your intrinsic motivations, perhaps.
So David, losing his job, facing ruin.
Yeah.
It's devastating, obviously, but it forces him to look inward, away from external validation.
That seems to be the idea, tapping into his own resilience because, well, what else is there?
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so building on that, both excerpts then really highlight this crucial turning point. The template mentions one mindset shift that changed everything, very definitive. And David's story points to his decision, to fight back after remembering that quote.
Yeah. You're not defeated when you lose, you're defeated when you quit.
Right, that one. So what can we learn about this pivotal shift? Is it always a sudden light bulb moment? Or more gradual, maybe a mix?
Well, this really gets into the power of our internal narrative, doesn't it? Because external events can definitely be catalysts, sure. But the sources seem to suggest the real turning point is internal. It's a conscious decision to change how you respond.
So David might have heard that quote before, but it only clicks then.
Exactly. It resonates differently in that moment of despair. Maybe it ignites something, agency. And the template's mindset shift points to the same thing, a deliberate change in how you see your circumstances, your own capabilities.
Shifting from feeling like a victim to taking action.
Precisely. Proactive engagement, you could call it.
Okay. So it's less about waiting for things to get better and more about deciding you're going to make them better. Grabbing the umbrella, like you said.
Yeah, I like that.
So following that shift, then comes the grind. Both outlines detail this.
Yes, the grind.
The template talks about daily habits that kept them moving forward when motivation faded. Key phrase, faded. And David's story shows this with, 2 years of reading, odd jobs, saving, just holding on to belief.
Right.
This part isn't glamorous, is it? It's often the longest part of the story.
Not at all. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
So what can we actually take away from that, practically?
Yeah.
How do you sustain effort through that long haul, especially when the initial excitement or desperation wears off?
Well, the key thing here, I think, is understanding that motivation. It's not constant. It's finite.
Right. You can't just rely on feeling inspired every single day.
No, that's just a recipe for inconsistency, isn't it? So the templates focus on daily habits. That's crucial.
Building a structure.
Exactly. Habits create structure, they create momentum, even on the bad days, the days you feel discouraged. Think about David's routine: reading, working, saving.
Not exactly thrilling activities in themselves, maybe?
Probably not, but they were the building blocks, right? It's about building systems, processes that support your goals. Not just waiting for motivation to magically appear.
Absolutely. Just showing up, those small, consistent actions adding up. Okay, and another big theme, failure. How we look at it.
Always a big one.
The template says failure is not final, and how to use it as fuel. And David's story, well, it shows him hitting numerous setbacks, but they ultimately push him forward somehow.
Right. They didn't stop him.
So how can we practically shift our own view? How do we stop seeing failures as, dead ends and start seeing them as learning opportunities, as fuel?
Yeah, that's the challenge. If you think about how our brains work, setbacks often trigger a sort of threat response, right? Feelings of inadequacy, discouragement.
Totally. Fight or flight or freeze.
Right. But the sources suggest consciously reframing them. Think of them as data points. David's failed attempts. They probably gave him vital info about what didn't work.
Guiding him towards better strategies.
Exactly. And that idea of using failure as fuel, it implies harnessing that emotional energy, the disappointment, maybe even anger, and redirecting it, channeling it into renewed effort, into problem solving, asking, okay, what did I learn here? Instead of just, beating yourself up.
That reframing feels incredibly powerful. Takes the sting out, maybe, turns it into a step. Okay, so then we get to the breakthrough.
The payoff.
Well, maybe. David's story ends with financial success, sure. But the script makes a point of saying it wasn't the money that mattered. He was proving to himself that no obstacle is permanent.
That's a key distinction.
So what's the deeper meaning here? Is breakthrough just hitting the external goal? Or is it more about an internal transformation?
I think what's really insightful there is that difference between external validation, the money, the success, and internal validation. While getting that tangible outcome is great, rewarding, the sources seem to suggest the real breakthrough is often developing that inner resilience, that self-belief.
So David's journey wasn't just about the business. It was about him proving to himself he could do it.
Right. Proving he could overcome. And the template also hints at breakthroughs beyond just, money or career, personal growth, well-being, which suggests the ultimate reward of the comeback might be strengthening your own sense of self-efficacy, knowing you can handle things.
So it's not just crossing the finish line, it's about the strength you built getting there, the person you became.
Well put. Yeah.
Okay, thinking about all this, and maybe reflecting personally for a moment, can you identify times, perhaps, where a rock bottom maybe presented an unexpected chance, or when a big mindset shift really was the turning point?
That's a good exercise.
And what might a personal grind look like when pursuing something tough?
Well, thinking about it, professionally, maybe a big project I had poured loads of energy into just didn't work out. Felt like rock bottom at the time.
Yeah, that's tough.
And the mindset shift, I suppose, was eventually recognizing it wasn't, a reflection of my worth, but just a learning experience, information.
Naming failure right there.
Exactly. And the grind in those situations, for me, it's about sticking to habits. Consistent learning, trying new approaches, even when feeling pretty discouraged, trusting the process, putting in the effort, even if the result isn't immediately obvious.
That's really relatable. Okay, so bringing it towards the end, both these resources finish with some kind of direct encouragement.
The call to action.
The template asks pretty openly, what's your comeback story? And the script for David's story is maybe a bit more forceful. So what's your excuse?
Yeah, quite different tones.
Definitely. Yeah. How do those different approaches land with you? Which one feels more effective maybe when you're personally facing an obstacle? The invitation versus the challenge.
That's interesting. The template's question feels more invitational, like you said.
Yeah.
Encourages reflection on your own resilience, past wins, maybe. The script's question is more direct, isn't it? A challenge. It aims to kind of push past self-limiting beliefs. What's stopping you, personally? I think a combination can be powerful. Remembering past comebacks builds confidence, reminds you can overcome things.
Yeah. Tapping into past evidence.
But sometimes you might need that direct challenge, a little jolt, to actually take action when you feel stuck.
So it depends on the person, the situation.
Probably. At the end of the day, the most effective call to action is likely one that resonates with your own values, taps into your own drive to grow, to overcome.
Makes sense. So as we've kind of unpacked all this, these comeback narratives, a few key things really seem to emerge, don't they?
Yeah, definitely some core themes.
We've seen how hitting a low point can surprisingly be this catalyst for change. The absolute need for that intentional shift in mindset.
Crucial.
The often unglamorous but totally essential grind. The power of consistent effort. Reframing failure not as an end, but as fuel, as learning. And understanding that the ultimate breakthrough, maybe it's more about that internal strength than just external rewards.
Exactly. It's recognizing that setbacks aren't really the opposite of success. They're often just, well, part of the journey to success.
Right. Okay, so here's a final thought to maybe leave with everyone listening. Consider this. If every challenge you're facing right now